turning point here too. And we're finally getting to the spiritual path part here, because up to this point
the whole time.
Oh, what?
Talking about it the whole time.
I've never not been on it. What?
Everybody, welcome to the Free Yourself podcast. My man, Jonathan Mathew.
What's up?
The Bridge Podcast, where everything is connected. My fucking man. How you doing, brother?
Dude, life is amazing right now. Life's good. Can't complain.
I love it, man. I love it. And I want to start off by first saying your life has so incredibly impacted mine in a very beneficial and positive way. And I hope you take this part of it as a compliment. And I think you really will. And one, because you remind me so much of myself in the experiences that you've gone through. But the reason why you're benefiting my life so much is because I've seen you go through those things and come out the other side so much stronger and so much better and so much more refined with your spiritual belief and lessons because you're so able to pull the lessons from those things, where for me it takes a lot of digging and I'm not quite as, I think I'm not as quite spiritually developed as you are and mindfully developed as you are, because these practices are relatively new to me. I'm not gonna lie. It's probably been 6 years since I've been on this, spiritual mindfulness journey, and really only over the past 2 years where I'm really putting into a lot of things, a lot of different practices other than just very unregular prayer and very unregular meditation,
Yeah.
A lot of other things that I do now, like just going on walks and making sure I'm connecting with nature and in a very deliberate way instead of just like it happens.
Yeah.
So,
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot to me. Yeah. I was just thinking about the first time, because Sean just moved down to Florida, but I'm thinking about the first time I met each of you guys. And I remember the first time I met you. I think the first time I saw you, I don't think we actually had like a formal conversation. Like I remember the first time we had a meaningful conversation, if you remember that time. But the very first time I met you, I remember because you were going through a bunch of different hair phases. I was like, whoa, this guy had a different haircut yesterday. That's a totally different haircut today. That's wild. He's just going for it. I dig it though.
Dude, yeah, I think
that's
when I was doing all the different parts and all the different styling it different. I had some hair on top but shaved here, and then I went from 1 to 2 to 3 to up top here and full comb over, and it was like all crazy. But
I like that you settled on this though. I think this is a good vibe. I dig it. It suits you.
It's very
Not everybody can pull it off. You got it going.
I'm not gonna lie. For the first time, it feels like it's actually like me and my hair.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like
that's interesting.
All the other times, it was like chasing a trend.
Yeah, trying to be a hair, like a style, right? Yeah.
Besides, when I grew my hair out and had the man bun, that really felt like me, and also because I did it before it was like a big thing. Like I just grew my hair out and took really good care of it. And then it was getting hot, so let's put it up. But I don't want to do a ponytail because that looks a little weird, so I'll do a man bun. And then as I was doing that, I'm seeing so many more people do it and stuff. And I'm like...
And then people are like, you're jumping on the bandwagon. But no, man, I was leading this shit.
Yeah, my ego is like, I fucking started that shit. But we all know that there's no way me doing a man bun could have affected anybody on the West Coast or anybody.
You never know, man. The butterfly effect. Some guy sees some other guy, flies in a plane. Other guy sees it. You never know how that works.
Yeah, maybe I did start it.
Maybe you did.
But for the first time, the dreads, because the dreads is something I've always wanted to do, but always been scared of what other people would say, think, and feel about it. And
yeah.
It took me turning 30 to be like, wait, I don't give a fuck what they think. I finally was like,
oh yeah,
man, it's a lot more. I mean, this whole, we can say what we want about certain things in the media and stuff. One thing that is happening is very inclusive ideals about people and their differences. That is something that's happening. So I think, like, I'm someone who doesn't, smoke weed 24/7 and has dreadlocks. So, but I feel like I'm the only one that had that full stereotype, because the way I present myself is not like a stoner burnout. Like, I'm someone who eats incredibly healthy, works out, has actual muscle. Like, I'm not wearing just tie-dye shirts and what I mean?
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of, but it was more overcoming that stuff, and the whole just like fully dedicating myself to being like, this is how I am, and whatever is going to come to me in my life is going to accept this. And if they don't accept this, then that wasn't meant for me. So like, I'm not ever going to, not going to say never. I don't see myself going into a corporate job with a shirt and tie where I'll need to have the,
when it's going to be like a dress code, a hair, exactly.
And I see a lot of businesses moving away from that being a thing that needs to happen anyway. So
I remember when I was I lived in California for like half a minute, for like just about 2 years, and like a lot of those like tech, like the biggest tech companies you think are like super corporate, they're like super chill, like they don't give a shit. Like people are walking on Google looking like rolling out of bed, like half their hair is cut off. Like people just do whatever they want, because I think especially over there, because of the culture around there, like people, especially in that kind of more higher conscious tech space, which isn't always the case, but in some of those companies, they're realizing that like employee happiness actually makes the company run better. So if I can have my employees be able to express themselves and be who they are, then maybe they're going to feel more comfortable coming to work and not having to put on this facade of who they have to be. As long as they're getting their work done and they're doing the right thing and they work together as a team, like who cares, like, why do we got to put on, these fake monkey suits, so.
And especially with today's climate of people always looking for that new job that has more freedom and more this and more that. It's like, well, if they like working here and they can be themselves, maybe they'll want to actually stay here and grow with the company and stuff, which is something that you don't really see a lot of. Now it seems like people go from job to job to job to job to job until they figure out, oh, this is the company I want to start. And this you know what I mean?
That's how it's
So that's a big part of it too. But the main reason why I wanted to get you on the podcast, just you instead of you and Sean, is because I want people to know more about your story and how you came to be with Sean on basically like the most open-minded podcast that dispels all the myths of the universe that like that's just showing people that we're all saying the same thing and everything is connected.
Pretty much.
So let's stop fighting. But take personal responsibility for your own goddamn health.
That's a big one. Yeah.
So the what I basically know is where the first part of it is that you were at Hun with Nick Williams. And
that's right.
Right.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Damn.
But I like also, but I want you to start before that too, because I know you grew up Lutheran and with a positive religious experience versus
so
a lot of people that have not had that same thing. So.
Yeah, and most of the people I know who have had negative experiences with that tend to be Catholic. I'm not like pinpointing at anybody here. That's just my observation. We don't need that. But yeah, I mean, like like people don't realize it, but like my grandfather was a pastor. So like really, and I'm talking about my mom's side. My dad died when I was 6. I didn't really know his side of the family very much. I never really kept in touch with his side of the family. There's not a lot of them in America to begin with. And I was just never very close. So I pretty much got raised entirely by my mom's side. So like people have their mom and their dad's side. For me, it was like my grandma's side, my grandpa's side, like, because I have a pretty big family. Okay. And, you know, my mom's from Guyana. So a lot of people don't know where that is from, but that's like South America. It's the only English speaking country in South America. People think like, you mean Ghana? I'm like, no, not Ghana. You mean like New Guinea? I'm like, no, not New Guinea. Both of those things are wrong. But like, it's kind of like, it's considered part of the West Indies, even though it's part of South America. So like, it's got the same similar culture like Trinidad and Jamaica, you know, and Barbados, that kind of, if you hear them talk, they talk very similar to that.
Very spicy food, right? That's it.
There's some kick to there.
Is there anything else? Is there anything else that they haven't cut? No.
Right. But yeah, so like, my grandpa was a pastor, and all my family pretty much moved from Guyana to like America between the 60s and 80s. So there's very few people I know that are left there. Everybody's pretty much went to New York or like Canada, and this randomly around the country, some people in England. But yeah, so my family has always been very religious. Like I said, Lutheran. So, and if you're not familiar with the difference there, I mean, there's like how many different sects of Christianity. Lutheran follows the teachings of Martin Luther, who's pretty much the guy who made the Bible essentially available to the public, because before that, people didn't know how to read, for one. And so you were going to church and you were just having to get your guidance from the guys who knew how to read, which were the pastors. And there was a lot of corruption behind that, right? And he was like, no, we're going to make it available for everybody to read. So Lutheranism is also, you know, synonymous with the Protestants. If you heard of that, Protestant, they're pretty much the same thing. Protestant protest, right? So essentially protesters of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, that's me.
Fight the power, man.
That's what I grew up as, Protestant, Presbyterian.
Yeah. So that's where that kind of branches off from. So I never had the like the hard, you know, like super strict, like you jerk off, you're gonna go to hell kind of, you know, Catholic kind of deal there. Because it was just a very like it was more like, it was really community based. Like, and all I have is stories from like my aunts, my uncles, my cousins who grew up there, my mom. And so they all had a very positive, you know, association with it. And out of all of my mom has 4 sisters. She's the 5th. She's the youngest of 5 sisters. Out of all 5 of them, she's probably the most spiritual in terms of the 5. And that really started when my dad passed away. So my dad passed away when I was 6. And my mom was just left to, you know, raise me and my sister by herself. And then my grandparents got sick and she was taking care of them. So she had to, you know, a lot of struggle, you know, and they'd only been married not very long. So, you know, and they both were like in their 2nd major relationship marriage. And then he passed away really quickly. So, and my mom was 39 when she had me. So she was older when she had me, because she was always a very career focused person. So she wanted to do that first. That was like her mindset, you know. He was a corporate lender, worked for Chase, Bank of America when they were like on their way up back in the 70s and 80s, or in the 80s. And so I always, you know, I went to communion, I went to church almost every weekend. And for me, like like I said, it was always more community based, more than like rule based. It was like, we're doing this to come together. Like we weren't like forced anything. My mom never like forced any crazy stuff on us, and we probably did more religious stuff than the average person. I'm guessing. I wouldn't know because I'm just me. That's my experience. But I always, and especially after my dad passed away, like that was a really it became a really important thing to have some sort of connection to God or to something more powerful, you know, especially when everyone was just trying to cope with like, well, what next, you know, or like my mom was just trying to deal with it. And she ended up getting into, like, I forget how, well, she had a friend, I know how, when she was like in her 30s, who was like a legit psychic, like not like a kind of psychic. And you get a reading, you're like, that was kind of true, but there was some other stuff. Like this was predicting stuff. You know, that like major events that happened in like U.S. history that ended up happening in 2000 and
It's
Like very intense. And she taught my mom how to meditate back then and stuff like that. But my mom never ended up getting too far into that. But it wasn't until my dad passed, she ended up looking for, some sort of like solace, some sort of closure behind it, because he passed into sleep. She never, you didn't get to say goodbye. It's not like he was on his deathbed, right? So,
yeah. So it was like completely out of nowhere. It wasn't like
no. So he was sick for a while. So it's a kind of a complicated story about like the things that compounded, but it's basically like a lot of autoimmune stuff that end up just like compounding on each other. It's like unfortunately most of my memories of him are like him in a hospital, not in a bed, like in my living room, and a nurse would come like every day. Like those are most of my memories. I remember a couple memories like before that. But yeah, so besides pictures, and it was always weird because like as I got older, I would see pictures of him and it'd be like, I'd want to remember a memory of him, but like I couldn't. And that was like frustrating for me. Because like I knew my mom did because she was like an adult who was very conscious, but I was like 4 and I was just trying to pull, I have very few memories that I can pull from. Yeah, but like I said, she ended up like finding like a psychic medium person again to see if she could like talk, communicate with my dad. And so that's when she ended up kind of opening up to that idea of spirituality. So even though I got raised, Christian, and, I was always taught the positive things about Christianity. It was never like you're bad if you do this. It's more like, be nice to be kind to other people, read the Bible and do these things and be community and help each other. Like it was always about that. Like my church did a lot of service-based stuff, which is always a positive thing, whether you're religious or not, like mission trips or whatever like that. So I had nothing bad to say about my experience with Christianity. I understand why people do have a bad experience with it. It really comes down to the people that are, teaching you that, or people around you who are promoting or, exposing you to Christianity. So I had a very positive influence in terms of my grandfather, my grandparents, my whole family. Like there's like very few people in my family that are like more extreme, I would say, extreme in terms of Christianity, where they're a little bit more rigid. But like I said, my mom was the least rigid and most open-minded of it. So I really enjoyed that. So she always taught me to have like a really close personal connection to God, more so than like you have to go to church to have it, which I think is what pushes a lot of people away. Like the structured organization of religion is your gateway to God versus you having a personal connection. Because she developed that as a kid and through some of her experiences. She always taught us that. And like I needed that, and she knew we needed that, growing up.
It's so cool because I know throughout your life you've had a lot of the same experiences that I've gone through. Hearing that about your upbringing, like it's so similar to mine as well. Like I'm such a mama's boy. Like I will 100% like say that.
I love my mama very much.
Yeah,
and now you know that.
Very much so. And
Bobby Boucher.
Like to the point where she's liking and commenting on all my stuff on social media.
That's awesome, dude.
We have a great relationship. And back when I was like cool and in high school and college, and I would be like, Mom, like stop doing that, like I can't believe it. And I've deleted comments.
God, Mom.
Yeah, like I've deleted comments of hers and stuff. Now I'm like, Mom, I need that engagement. Please keep doing it. but the similarity of that, because obviously a very big difference is your father passing away at 6, and but it had me being Presbyterian growing up. It's a very not strict at all, Christian religion, where like I don't remember ever being told to do Lent. I don't remember ever being told to like if like you're gonna go to hell if you sin. Like you like there was no rulers on the back of the hands. It was always like it was like it. I guess a cool way to kind of say it is like it's the hippie version of religion. Like, you know,
It's
like,
it's the most hippiest of the Christianity, the modern Christianity, right?
it's
So
like love everybody and like be nice to everybody and do some service work. And like Sunday school is kind of cool. Like I see a bunch of people that are all friends and it's community. And
yeah, and that was another big thing too. It's like Sunday school. I had a bunch of friends in Sunday school, and that was like a fun thing to go and do and like hang out with people and meet kids and do random stuff. So yeah.
yeah, and I even
And
joined. I even joined like a summer. It was totally because there was 3 cute chicks, but I joined
sinner.
It was a fucking like service group thing, like whatever. And I don't remember anything but going there and talking to those girls. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like I can't remember a single thing that we actually did as a group. I just remember being in that basement with everybody and talking to those girls. Like, shout out, they know who they are.
There you go, a little shout out, nice.
I'm not gonna put their names out there, but they know if they watch this, they know who they are. So that's similar, first part of our life. And then when I was about that age, my dad did go through a very big change in his life. Like he went from smoking cigarettes, all the time and like always in the garage and stuff. And he had, I don't want to say anger problems, but he went from, I saw as his child a very big switch. So it was like a death and rebirth for him in his life, to where he went to like a what would love do in this situation mindset, and his higher power became love. And like those are his words, even like,
wow,
he's not someone who, like, it was always my mom bringing us to church and my mom bringing us to Sunday school, and my mom was a teacher of small children in Sunday school and all that stuff. But my father, he was the one who actually kind of showed me that like love is the higher power, and in every situation, if you can bring love into it, so it was like, I can say like I had 2 different dads, like from that point. And I remember a specific event that happened, like I don't need to talk about it, but like that I can't, like, it's crazy to think like that same person that when that happened was my father that I know now, like, 'cause he's the most loving and caring, man in my life, for sure. Like that, man, I'm getting emotional,
That's amazing.
I know I'm very, how grateful and fortunate I am to have had the parents that I have. And, but my mom, very similar to your mom, is a very spiritual person too. Very, she, I would say my dad more to the point of what your mom is experiencing with seeking out, like a spiritual medium and a way to connect and stuff, and being loving and caring. But then my mom as more of like a someone who was bringing us to that higher power and being like, this is something that's important in your life to have. And the Protestant Presbyterian church, I don't have any bad experiences from that. It was the quote unquote bad experience that I have from religion was being like, wait, I have what you talked about, my relatives who born again Christian, like the Bible is the way and 4,000 years old and gay people are bad and sinners.
Well, see,
and all that.
So I had a couple of cousins who were, born again Christian too for a period of time. And like, it was again, this is not an attack, but just in the way it affected our family and our relationship to my cousins who, so like, side note on my cousins, they're twins, like 2 of the funniest women I've ever met in my entire life, like hilarious, my first cousins. But it was like a little bit like culty almost. And it really created a rift in like our relationship with them. 'Cause like, they're amazing and we love them. And like, we ended up kind of, we didn't do it, but she ended up kind of distancing herself from that because it was from a relationship she was in at that time.
Yeah.
So once that relationship ended, she kind of was able to kind of detach from that and release from all that kind of conditioning that was happening there. But yeah, so and again, like it's the people, like you know, maybe those specific people were the issue versus the ideology. You know, I'm not one to say it, but yeah, like I know what you mean with like the stark difference between like being that and being a Protestant and being, you know, all these different more extreme variations of Christianity. So
And especially like now, of course, especially in my high school years, I was not the most well behaved. We'll say that. You know my past and with getting clean and all that. But it felt like everything I was doing was wrong to them, and there was no pleasing them, no matter how. I obviously put some time and actually, changing my life in between that. Now, me and all those people that are born again Christian, we don't talk about that religious stuff, but our relationship is so much better now because I'm more open-minded to just being like, that's what you believe and that's beautiful. And you guys are actually like incredible, amazing, loving people to me. And that's how I'm going to judge our relationship, like how you treat me. And I'm going to make sure that I'm, reciprocating that love and giving you love. Like, and, next week I'm going to be in Florida visiting a lot of those people. Like
yeah.
And I'm excited for it. Not like, oh my God, they're gonna tell me I'm a sinner, and and not at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm really excited. And my one cousin who was the closest to us, who was the children of those born again Christian, who is very much centered in her belief. She's now got 3 children, and Leo is about to turn 1 in September, and he's a Virgo. So like. And I'm someone who's August 24th is my birthday, so I thought I was a Leo for so long, and I am a Virgo. So I have this.
Yeah.
I have a big connection to this 1-year-old son that's named Leo that is a Virgo. I'm like I gotta talk to
the main.
Yeah, I'm like, did I just get reincarnated? Like, it's not my son, but like
spirit family coming in, like, right? That's hilarious.
I'm excited to go to Florida and see them. But we got really sidetracked on that. I want to get you back to your story, and taking back into, like, I'm guessing you're closer to like 10-ish now, and you're so.
Yeah, let's see. So I mean, it's always hard. Like I've done a lot of. I'm an introvert. It's hard to say when, what nature versus nurture, how that kind of happens. But the way I am now and naturally how I am, I feel, as an introvert. And with that comes like a lot of introspection, for better or for worse.
I get that.
So I've done a lot of just reflection on myself growing up over the years, and I've been able to see like into some past moments, through some experiences, and really kind of observe what was happening, like major events that happened through our childhood that shaped my beliefs and shaped my perceptions of things, and how long those perceptions lasted until I was able to break them. Some I'm still in the process of working through, right? It's not really, it's like, I'm done, like it's never like I'm done. But yeah, so around that time, so I was always a shy kid-ish. I always remember being like, this is not a braggy, it may sound like I was always just like a very nice kid. Like, sometimes to the point of like naivete. Like I was like, I remember seeing like the first time I saw someone else get bullied, like it didn't like make sense to me. Like, why would you do that? Like, why are you gonna like hurt that person? Like, it didn't make sense to me. That's like how naive I kind of felt like I was back then. And I kind of like kept that along, as I got older, and I ended up like in middle school is when I started to kind of become like and I was always creative. That's another big thing that my mom taught. So this is a big backtrack into like when I was young again. My mom taught me how to read very, very early, like earlier than most kids. So I actually skipped kindergarten because like my parents. This is I know fancy, right? I skipped kindergarten. But apparently, like my mom said, is like I was teaching other kids how to do like stuff and telling them how to do stuff. The principal took them in, like you should probably just be in first grade, honestly. So they just pushed me into first grade. So I'm a year younger than pretty much everybody I was in my grade at that time. And I think a lot of that was because she taught me how to read at such an early age. And she was always, again, like it's hard to put like a pinpoint personality with my dad. And I'm sure my personality would have been entirely different if he was around. But my mom was always very, much more heavy to the feminine side. So she's very creative. And so that was like a big part of, it's a big part of, what I do now. Like, I'm very artistic. I like writing. I gravitate towards that sort of stuff naturally now. But I was always into art, always into drawing, always into creating and stuff like that as a kid. So like my big outlets growing up in middle school were creativity. And then like, that's when I started to learn how to become like funny a little bit as like a nice little self-defense mechanism or a mode of acceptance as you start to get into like the preteen years. It's like, people like it when I make them laugh. This is good. So I remember, I went to a really small middle school too. So like this is another thing too. I only ever went to private schools, which sounds snooty and people have given me a hard time about that growing up. Like, oh, you think you're special? I'm like, no, my parents did it. It's not like I told my mom, like, hey, mom, I want to go to private school. You're going to do it. That's not what happened. Like, she was like, I want the best education. And a lot of it was my dad. She said, like, one of my things my dad told her was like, make sure they get a good education. So she kind of, held that close. It's like, I want you guys to get a good education. And we live in Princeton, New Jersey. It's a really great spot for that. There's a lot of good schools in the area. My graduating class in middle school with 27 kids.
You go to St. Paul?
No, I went to Chapin, which is like, where that is.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so really, really small.
Yeah.
And when you're like in a small, you get really isolated in terms of like you're living in a bubble essentially. So then I went to Hun, which isn't that much bigger. Like my graduating class here was like 140 kids at high school. And so that was like a major, and along middle school, this is when this happened, which is like a major point in my whole life. Was when I started getting into like mixed martial arts. And I remember it was probably 6th grade because like I had played a bunch of different sports and I never really took to anything. Like I tried a bunch of different stuff. Like I did the violin for like a little bit and like that wasn't my thing. I played the guitar for a little bit, and in middle school I wasn't really about it. I played soccer, I played lacrosse, I did that for half a minute. But then I got back into martial arts, and I just like gravitated back towards, I had done it when I was like very, very little, but it was like 5-year-old Taekwondo, which isn't really Taekwondo. Like, no offense to all your 6-year-olds with black belts, but they're not really black belts.
Like, I think I was in 3rd grade and I had a green belt in karate. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, come on now. That's a Crayola green belt right there. Is what that is.
I did a plan.
It's a Fisher Price. That's a Fisher Price green belt. I went to Tiger Schulman's, which actually at the time got a lot of flack for being like a belt factory, like a kind of like a fakey karate place. And maybe it was for like at one point in time, but I went there when they were just shifting into MMA. So I remember when I went there, this was like, if you follow UFC, which I know you do, this was like peak Tito and Chuck. So like Tito and Chuck UFC days. So that was like the first fight I watched was Chuck versus Tito. That's how long ago I got back into it.
That's
right.
Because I only heard about that stuff. I wasn't watching that
really?
back then. Like,
yeah.
The only reason why I watch now was because a couple of years ago started listening to Rogan. Like before, it was like, if there was a big fight, like it was boxing that my friends down the road would buy, and I would watch that. And like the MMA stuff, it was like I only knew who people like Chuck Liddell were, but I was watching back then. So that's awesome. Keep going. My bad.
Yeah. So, no, you're good. So I got into that, and I remember going to that, and it wasn't like we did some like traditional like karate stuff, like, you know, your traditional, like what you think when you go to the middle school karate class. But then there was like but I remember we had a separate class, right? And like you had to be not invited, but like if like my teacher or my sensei thought like you were good, you're not good enough, but like if you were able to do it, it was a grappling class. Like this is new. Like I remember the first time I learned like a kimura or like an arm lock and an arm bar. I was like, whoa, this is really interesting. Like this is kind of cool. Like I didn't get it at all. Like it was like really complicated for me. But I gravitated toward that. And there was a kickboxing class that I had to get asked to go to. And I'm like, whoa. So actually my first thing I actually ever got into was boxing, actually. So I remember like being into MMA. And again, Tiger Schulman's was just switching over and had like really high level amateur fighters at that time that I like started following. Some of them are in the UFC now, which is hilarious because I remember them when they were amateurs. And like we would all root for them, like on the amateur circuit. Lyman Good's one of them. Jimmy Rivera's one of them. So it was awesome to see those guys get to the UFC finally. I started getting into that, and I remember it must have been 8th grade or 7th grade. I think it was 8th grade. But they would have tournaments. They would have like inter-school tournaments because like Tiger Schulman is a franchise chain, so that's why he gets a bad rap. But there was like a bunch along the East Coast, and it was just like this Challenge of Champions tournament. That was the name of the tournament. And like everybody from all the schools, like thousands of people would come to do this tournament.
Like straight out of Karate Kid, friggin'.
Literally straight out of Karate. That's exactly it, man. It was at the Edison like event center, like that big place. Like covered in mats, and like there was a cage too for like the higher advanced like people, and the kids, adults would compete too. But I remember like when they thought like, oh, you should compete, and I was like, oh, okay, like this is my first time doing it, and that was like one of the most like. It was like 8th grade, like grappling and kickboxing competition, but it was like one of the most significant things for me as a person because I was never unathletic. All like everything that everyone sees me as athletic or fit is all learned. Like I wasn't unathletic. I was like completely average. Like I remember, do you remember the presidential fitness test? Do you remember that when they would give you like the yellow and the red? So I remember like from 2nd to 3rd grade, 4th grade, I got the yellow like participant, which was like, good job, and you get a trophy because you did it, you know? And then from like 5th grade to like 7th grade, I got like the national level, which is the intermediate one. So I was like, okay, you're pretty average. You can do some stuff. And I remember 8th grade is when I kicked it up a notch because I started training like that. And I was like, I remember I could do like 15 pull-ups because I was just focusing on pull-ups, which is like a big deal because like nobody could do any. And we were like, whoa, you can do pull-ups? And I was like, I have no idea how I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And I got the presidential, like everything was just like working hard. Like my body naturally wants to be skinny, which means like no muscle and no fat. So like all the muscle I have now, it's just like I've had to work to put it on. All the athleticism I've had was just learned. And I remember in that tournament, I was like nervous out of my mind. It was 2 different tournaments. It was a grappling and a kickboxing section. The first part was a grappling tournament. And I'm like adrenaline dump before I even get into the fucking arena. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I didn't even do anything yet. Like, how am I going to do this? Going at the same time going through puberty. So I'm like, like,
yeah, 8th grade's like peak, all of that.
Yeah, right. It's all coming together. Like I'm getting a mustache now. Like, what the fuck? But I remember like this is the first time competing. Like I'd rolled with people before. And the first match was like almost too easy. Like I kind of rolled through the kid, but it was like okay, I got my feet wet. I was like, oh, I won the first round. Like it was kind of a gimme, but I won.
Like damn.
And then I remember the second one was like significantly harder because the kid was actually seemed like he was like trying more. But I ended up winning that one, and I was like, whoa, like this. That's 2 now. Like I won 2. That's crazy. That's wild. And then I remember I went to, this was the semifinal. Then I made it to the semifinal. I don't remember how many matches in between. I got the semifinal. And there's this, I think the kid's name was Nathan, this tall, and I was like 5'4" at that time, right? This kid must have been like 5'10", like 5'9", but he was just like, he was skinny. We were in the same weight class, but just like long.
Yeah.
And that match was like the switching point in like my mind. Like because he was so long, like, and again, my takedowns and all my stuff was like so rudimentary at this time. So it was just like me trying to like muscle it a lot of the time and doing some technique, but it ended up going into like double overtime, and I was exhausted because we were both like at a stalemate, and it was scored very similar to wrestling, but it scored exactly how you score jiu-jitsu if you know how to score that. It's like 2 points for takedown, position to get points, whatever like that. So we were like in a dead standstill, and there was like so double overtime because you have to have a winner because it's a tournament style thing, right? So we're just going to go to somebody who wins, right? So like 10 seconds left, 10 or 7 seconds left. I remember there were like 10 seconds left in the second overtime, right? And with like every ounce of like effort in my body, I just like got in on a bear hug and just threw the kid and got the takedown with like 2 seconds left before the end of the semifinal. And I got the 2 points, and I was exhausted. But like in that moment, I was like, oh my God, like this is the first time I've ever like dug deep into like that physical well of just like mom lifting car off of child strength to win that semifinal. And I was like, oh my God. And it was, and I remember my instructor, who had happened to be there because he was looking at other kids and other people, I looked over and he had this look of like impressiveness. Like he like, oh, wow. And I was like, and that stuck with me too. And it's like, whoa, like I did that. And like, that wasn't impressive. Like I just did something physically impressive. Like I've never done that in my entire life. Like, and then I ended up getting to the finals because I made it. And I ended up like pretty much breezing through that guy. So like the finals was like easier, and that was like my first like major like just my first trophy I ever got. That was like my first like major like big win. And I was hooked. Like I was hooked immediately on that. And that became like my main focus even through high school. Like I played football in high school, like you know, but my main focus was always like MMA. I even wanted to pursue that after high school. And I was like very close to like deciding not to go to college and to pursue it. Like even at that time, because I was training so consistently, I had a different instructor who was like a very big mentor for me at that stage, like really anchored in me, like discipline. It's like, if you want to get to the next level, like you have some talent and you've been working hard, but like to get to the next level, like if you want to compete as an amateur, like we're gonna have to step some things up. So he really pushed me like to my physical limits when I was like a junior and senior in high school, which I'm like really grateful for, because again, so it was like we're just breaking new ground in terms of like what my capacity was mentally. That was a big one, to push myself. And it was through football and MMA, like I really learned a lot about like mindset. Because again, I wasn't gonna go play D1. I wasn't gonna go to UConn with Nick Williams, you know, like that wasn't gonna happen. But football meant a lot to me because I remember I wanted to play. I was always a huge like a football fan since I was like a kid, since like 2004. I remember it was when I became like a Packers fan for whatever fucking reason. And I know what it was. It was because my first ever football video game was Madden 99 for N64, if you remember those old cartridges.
Oh, yeah.
And the two starting teams were like the Packers and the Bears. And I just ended up playing with the Packers, and I started following them on TV.
On the cover of that.
Was he?
I think Brett Favre was on the cover. I know there's a N64 football game where it was Brett Favre on the cover, because I remember the Packers. I can see that like on the gray.
Dude, like, Favre was my shit, dude. Favre was my shit. Like I'm not a new Packer fan. Like I'm a Aaron Rodgers fan, which is a whole situation right now. But and we're in that one fantasy football league together, so this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But
come to the Giants, Aaron Rodgers.
No, that would be the worst thing ever.
I'm a fan of my fantasy team and not of any individual sport. I will not tell anybody what they. I'm not saying, you know, I hate the Eagles or anything. Like
right.
I would never say that. I would never.
Oh yeah, we're in Eagle country right now. But then like in for football too, like even though I never. Like there was kids way more talented than me. Like I went to like, if you don't know football, like I went to a prep school in New Jersey, which is like a low key hotbed for football, which people don't realize. I played with some studs. Like we always bring up Nick Williams, but like that was he was the first person I remember ever noticing like this guy's just a kid, but this guy's not a kid. Like I remember when I showed up as a freshman, the seniors we had and the juniors we had were like monsters, because like Nick was a junior at that time and he wasn't even the best guy on the team like for high school at that time. It was a stack, but that was like my first like 95-pound soaking wet 5'4" kid walking in. And that was like the last year we actually had like real hazing, because like after that year it became like, you know, like that's when like in the country. Like they started to shut it down, but like it was like I had fun with it because like they weren't like evil with it. It was just like rite of passage kind of deal. But yeah, he was the first person I remember ever seeing. It was like, whoa, like that's what it takes to be like at the next level. And he even was kind of a dick to me too on the field. Like they were like him and one of the kids, Sam Baxendale, would they would just like snipe us with footballs, like while we were in like the freshman practice. We would just get like headshotted and like collapse to the ground. And it was awful. It was not a good time. They used to fuck with us so much. But I remember, and this is another. I'm going through like major moments that shape my perspective. But this is when Nick was a senior, so I was a sophomore. And I remember this is a scrimmage. We were playing Trenton High School. So a scrimmage, right? Doesn't even count. Doesn't even really matter, right? No one gives a shit. But this one play, because Nick's Nick, right? So Nick, probably my height now, like 5'9", 5'10", no bigger than 5'10". But like, I know he actually lost weight when I saw him go to the NFL. But like in high school, he was a thick boy. But he would play receiver, he play slot, he play running back. He would literally do everything on the field, like all the time. Athlete. Like a fucking athlete. Like, and I remember this one play, he was at running back, and our line just collapsed immediately. Like they just ran through, and the play must have lasted, I counted, like 10 seconds, like 10 or 12 seconds, which is very long for a football play to go when a line just collapses entirely, because he like just did not give up. Like he just didn't, he like scrambled backwards, ran this way, ran back way, like broke a tackle, came back the other way, and he ended up like getting back to the line of scrimmage. It's like, it wasn't even a positive play, but it was like, I remember like, holy, like, whoa. And like, he would never drink water during the games because he was just so well hydrated. Because like as a freshman, we wouldn't dress for varsity games. He would just be on the sideline, like giving water to them. Yeah. And he was like the most focused, like only took a couple sips of water because he used to prepare, like I remember more than anybody else. And I remember one game he had like a rushing touchdown, or a receiving touchdown, and a kick return touchdown. But like he was a dick, and kind of like a joke, like, would fuck around a lot during practice, but like game time was like all focus. Mm-hmm. So like in my mind, like for like MMA especially, at least, like I remember I would kind of use that as like a blueprint for like my mental, and he never knew this because we never got close because of the we were such a difference in like age in class. But I was like, okay, like this is what, like I'm seeing it for the first time. Like this guy is, and he didn't become a professional football player. He would end up becoming a professional football player. Like I knew at that time, like this is what it takes. And so like I worked my butt off. There was kids way more talented than me that dropped out because they were complaining about not getting playing time, or they just gave up. But like I was one of the maybe one of 3 kids in my class that like stayed with it all the way through the senior year. And I got injured in my senior year, but I ended up like earning a starting spot. And like that was a big deal for me because like someone of my stature and my capabilities like shouldn't have been on a starting spot. But it was only because like I worked my ass off. Like I remember going up to my coach my junior year and telling him like I want to play. Like I know what you think of me, and I know like there's some kids that are just here to do it. Like I told, like I want to play, and that was like a really big moment for me because I remember the look in both their eyes. So like, okay, like all right, we'll give you an opportunity to prove yourself. So like, and I did, and that meant a lot to me. And I ended up winning the coaches award, which is was a big deal, and that was a major moment for me. It was like a little like a Rudy kind of moment, like to be acknowledged for like the work that I put in, even though like I wasn't going to play professionally, like I wasn't an all-star stud or whatever like that. But the fact that I stuck with it, pushed myself, and committed to something that meant a lot to me, was again like that was all like internally like life-changing stuff for me. And so like, where am I at in my life story now? So I ended up going to, so in my mind, like I didn't tell anybody this, but like I wanted to become a professional fighter at that time, like during high school. It's like, I don't really want to do school. Like I want to do this. Like this is the one thing I've intersected I was good at and I enjoyed, which is like a rare to find those combinations at such a young age. And I remember like, I wasn't really like great at anything else. Like I was pretty much like a jack of all trades for most of my life. So which is now, I'll get into that later. It was which is a very positive thing. At that time, like everybody just wants to be the best at whatever that one thing is, because our culture just glorifies people who are just the best at one thing. And so I thought I could do it. Like I really did. And so, but I ended up deciding to go to school because I felt like I owed it to my dad, I owed it to my mom to put all the effort into getting me to the school to like at least get a degree, which is a smart thing to do. And I'm glad I did. I ended up going to school for architecture again. So that's like where my creative side came in. Into play, because I was always decently creative. I wasn't the most artistic because I had like technically skilled in terms of drawing, but just in terms of creative, like my imagination was very like open, and I could really pull things together from different things, and tap into that creative muse. So I went to school for architecture, and that I was an architecture student for a year. Then I decided to switch majors, and that's another big life-changing point here too. And we're finally getting to the spiritual path part here. Because up to this point,
the whole time.
Oh, what?
Talking about it the whole time.
I've never not been on it. What? Yeah. So again, 27 kids graduating class, 130, 40 kids, high school. Then I went to Penn State. So like there was 43,000 kids there, more if you include graduate students.
The whole population of Princeton is in this.
Is goes to Penn State basically. So that was like, and I didn't really, it was hard for me to like recognize how challenging that was for me. Because I like in the moment, like I felt like I could handle it. Like I was fine. Like there's not gonna be that big a deal, and it didn't really feel like it was that big a deal when I was like going to Penn State or in college. But looking back, it was like a very major shift for me. Like just small fish in a small pond being a smaller fish in a gigantic pond, like in the ocean. Like
I actually think that is. I think there's only 20,000 people in Princeton.
Really? So two Princetons?
Something like that.
I would not be surprised.
Or I remember sidetrack. So when I was working at the Montgomery facility of Princeton Fitness and Wellness, it was something like either we had 6,000 members, or there was 6,000 people in Princeton and we needed to get 10% or something like that. It was either we had 6,000 and that was 10%, or there's only 6,000 and we were trying to get 10%. So it was something. Probably had a population of Princeton in just your freshman class.
Probably, you're probably right. And so, so I'm going for architecture. So, which is a very different than most other majors, because for most majors in most schools, you don't get accepted into your major until like after your sophomore year, I believe. But with architecture, you were automatically in the major, which is very different. And so that was also, so my freshman year was the same year the Sandusky thing happened. So I was there for the riots that happened when I remember exactly where I was when they happened. And how that whole thing went down, which is wild. And our football team sucked forever until after I graduated, then we got good again. Yeah. But that was that. But I had a challenging time like adjusting to that, to college life. Just like being accountable for myself in general, and then also just like mentally having like 1 foot in the door-ish, 1 foot out of the door, because my mind was always still like I feel like I'm just like I have to do this because I know where I want to be. Like I want to be training, like I want to be doing that, but I can't if I'm doing this. And architecture is a very, very demanding major. Like I picked like the worst major to to like split time with, which I'm glad I did because I learned a lot and I had a lot of positive experiences, and everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to happen, right? And so I ended up joining a fraternity. That was the first time I got high because I had smoked before in high school, but I never got high. And me and my friend would try to make edibles, and it just didn't work. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But I remember the first time I got high, we got fucking destroyed. We got fucking destroyed, and then we had to run because it was like Hell Week for pledging, and then they got us super high, and like we were under the impression that we would just be able to go back to bed. So it was Hell Week. So we were like trapped. We were like a bunch of us locked in like a room like this big. And they would wake us up at like 3 a.m. with like pots and pans and do whatever, all the fucking crazy shit. But this one night, like two brothers kind of like, they did trick us, but they were like, okay, yeah, you guys have it rough. And they made it seem like they were doing it on the side. Like, we'll just come in, we'll smoke you up. It was chill for a little bit. And so they just got us super high, and then they woke us up like an hour later, and we're all just like, oh my God. And we had to like run naked outside to like another fraternity house. It was a rival fraternity, and it was an experience. But so that
oh my God.
So that was interesting. That's when I started becoming like a pothead. A little bit right after that. So that was like into my second semester. And I was doing good in all my like architecture classes, but not doing great in my other classes that I kind of had to take because it was like gen eds. And I was just getting lazy with it and sloppy with it, and distracted with being at Penn State and all there is that to do with Penn State.
And in a fraternity.
So like, and then I ended up in architecture, which is a very small class because it's it's a hard major to get into. It's just very small to begin with. My one really good friend, Ashton, who was, you have to meet the guy, but he was probably 5'6", 5'7", but like 190 pounds of like pure muscle. So like, how much do you weigh?
I'm 165.
How tall are you?
5'4". So
okay, so yeah, he was probably 5'6", 180, 190. Like he was a thick boy. Jeez. But then also, so he was the weirdest combination of human being I met at that point because I didn't really know him until like the second semester. Like he was there in the major, but the super jack. He was older. I think he had done like a branch campus and come here. I think he was like 20, but like super jacked. But then looked like squirrel. He looked sketchy as fuck. Like his face was like sketchy as fuck. He would always wear this sweatband around his head. And he was like a super stoner. So he was like this super jacked, like super stoner, but also like one of the most brilliant like architecture students. Like he was the best architecture student in the class. And we became like, I forget how he became close friends. But then we ended up just like smoking together all the time. Like we were just like, like hanging out all the time, second semester. And I remember like fast forward. So like, I pull like I was up for like 52 hours straight. I remember, like finishing finals. Jesus. That was the only time I ever took Adderall, and it worked.
My Westchester degree would say that Adderall works.
there you go. It's hilarious. And so like I remember we were done with like crits, which is the critiques, because you don't have like finals in architecture. You have like you present a project you worked on for 3 months, and then teachers and students tear it apart essentially.
That sounds good for the self-esteem.
Yeah. Which in retrospect is like I thought it was art majors don't get enough respect. I'll say it. People think it's like why don't you get a real degree? Because I got friends who are in engineering. Like architecture is hard because there's like as much problem solving and there's no right answer. It's just like what is the best answer, and you have to have an explanation for every single thing that you do.
And isn't it
literally everything
so insanely math based, like with and shit?
When you get to a certain level, you have to make it's more design and math, like combining the two. But you literally have to have like a reason for there has to be meaning for every single thing that you design. So like even in this room, like why did I space it the way it is? Why is the door frame the exact way it is? Why is the height of the door the way, like that kind of stuff? Like you gotta know like, well, why are your windows this high? Why, like if the sun is coming at that angle for optimal light? Like you gotta know a lot of shit for no fucking reason. For a good reason, to make it the most optimally built place, right? So that was exhausting. So Ashton's driving me home in his like periwinkle blue. We used to call it the Methmobile because it looked like the sketchiest fucking car you'd ever seen in your entire life. I don't even think it's like one of those brands of cars they don't even make anymore, like a Daewoo or something like that. Like it was one of
I'm back in the day.
Yeah. So I remember he's about to drive me back to my dorm because I was a freshman. He lives off campus. And right as we get to the stop sign, you go right to go to campus, you go left, you go to his place. And he just turns to me and he looks like, "Hey, you want to do LSD? You want to do acid?" And I was like, "Okay." And then we just both started laughing and just like we're just driving and blasting music. And so I remember that was the first time I did was acid, was like the day after finals. And it was a very sketchy getting it because he knew a guy who knew a guy, and there was a meetup, and like I couldn't be there. Like,
yeah,
the guy was super sketchy about it for good reason.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and so he ended up getting a couple, tabs, and the tabs had we're coming full circle here. The tabs had pictures of Jesus on them. So there's your Christianity moment for you right there. So like Jesus face tabs. So you go back to his place. And that was like the first part of that was like insanely amazing. Like all what you think of when you think of tripping is like the color is like energy. Like it was so like energizing, and it was just like so much fun. And we stayed the whole entire night. And I remember there was this one point though where we were both just kind of like in your own world kind of deal. Like when you're doing it, right? There's stuff going on, whatever. But I remember I going outside and I was like sitting in the grass. I was just like feeling the grass. I was like, "Oh wow, this is so nice." But then I started getting like deep in the rabbit hole of my mind. Like I said, like I have a natural tendency to just like go deep into things, whether I'm on anything or not. And I had this kind of like epiphany moment. It was like, and I remember he came out and like sat down with me. He's like, "You good?" I was like, I don't want to do architecture anymore." He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're pretty good at it." I'm like, I don't want to do it. It's like, I want to become like a fighter. That's what I wanted to do. Like, that's what I want to be. Like, I'm going to drop out of architecture. Like, I'm going to change everything up. And like, after that, like I committed mentally and physically to that. Like I stopped smoking, I stopped drinking. Like it was like a known thing that I was like one of the sober brothers, like for most of my college. And it wasn't because I didn't enjoy that stuff. It's because like, this was way more important to me. Like I can't be smoking. I was super paranoid about smoking affecting my performance, about alcohol, impacting my performance. Like sophomore year, I started training at the gym, the local gym that was nearby, and working out all the time, and like went hardcore on that. I switched my major to nutrition because it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to be in college, I'm going to get a degree. I'm going to get something that at least if I learn it can benefit me as an athlete. So I just made that my focus. Nutrition I was going to learn like sports nutrition, how that was going to help me, which ended up becoming a major thing for me. Because that was another thing in high school which I didn't talk about, like my physical transformation. Like I was like 5'4", like 95 pounds soaking wet, like thin as a rail. And by the time I was done with college or high school, I was like 5'9". I got taller, obviously. I didn't do that. Like that was just genetics. But I was like 170, and like almost all of it was like me busting my ass in the gym, and like learning how to eat a caloric surplus, which like. That's the one thing. If you're like a skinny person, like every skinny person who can't gain weight is like in denial of the fact that they're not eating enough. You just got to eat more, eat more. So people would like chicks that would never ever talk to me in high school were like talking to me because I was like had like legit muscle, and like people were like, "Whoa!" People were like, "Can you teach me? Like, can you train me?" I was like, "You just got to eat a lot, like go hard in the gym." So there was that. And so like I was really, again, like I said, pushing myself. Sophomore year, junior year. But like eventually I ended up, and part of why I got into smoking and drinking in freshman years, because I had this, because I was very, very severely depressed. I had like a lot of social anxiety that like I had not really even become aware of yet. Because I was just kind of like grinding through it, and just pushing through it. Like I didn't even realize that I was supposed to pay attention to that. Like there were days where I would just like sleep the whole day and skip class, like, and not because I was tired, just because like I just didn't want to, like I just felt like shit, And so that crept back in, like every summer I would get this like little mental reset when like everybody was gone, because I'm an introvert. Like, oh God, I can just like breathe here again, and like I would just go outside, and there's beautiful hiking there. But then like school would come again, class would come again, people would come again, and I would just like shut down. I remember like my junior year when it got really bad was. I'm a very lean person to begin with. And I must have been weighing like 155 pounds going in, because I lost weight to compete, because I'm not competitive at a heavier weight. If you know martial arts or fighting. But junior year, that was my first time working like a real like job, and I was working a decent amount of hours, opening a gym at fucking 5 a.m. while taking like 18, 20 credits in college, while being severely depressed and having social anxiety.
Jesus.
Yeah.
You know how to do it.
The ultimate cocktail of how to not live your life in college. But I remember, and this is when I didn't even realize it then, but what had happened was I became like severely, severely depressed again in the fall. And I ended up losing like 20, 25 pounds, like in a month. Cause like some people like binge eat, which is a definite problem, but like I would just like starve. Like I wouldn't do it on purpose. Like I just wouldn't be hungry, and like I just wouldn't eat. Like I just wouldn't feel like eating or like.
Yeah, I'm a binger with everything.
No.
The only thing that I don't think it's everything. If I'm gonna do it, it's too much. Like, I know that about myself, and like I try not to focus like on the whole I'm an addict and all that. Like, you know what I mean? I try not to.
Yeah.
It's more of like I'm in recovery, and now I know this about myself. So let's try and work some discipline. Like that's how I try to word it, instead of being like I'm an addict. You know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The perception shift is everything, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I remember like it was funny because you ever seen the movie The Machinist with Christian Bale? Have you ever seen that movie?
No.
That's the one where he like played right before he got the Batman role, but he got like super, super frail for that role. Like if you ever seen that picture of him where he's like gone.
Yeah, I do know that.
Yeah, if you've seen that.
I think is it? It's not a fighting movie, is it?
No. He got skinny for The Fighter, but that was a different movie.
Oh, okay, but, that's probably what I'm thinking of.
But he got like, so I would like literally, I was like so unaware of it. Like I was so unaware of like how bad of a place I was mentally, for a variety of reasons. And I would like weigh myself every day, and like I would see the number getting lower, but like it just wouldn't register in my head. It wasn't until my roommate, one of my best friend Ryan's, who just got married this year, like was in the room with me while I was like weighing myself, and it was like I said 135 or 133, and that's very, very light for me. He's like, and I remember Ryan like had this look on his face like, "Whoa, you're looking kind of like skinny, John. Like, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I didn't."
Right, I'm great.
I lost. It wasn't even that. It was just like complete apathy, like complete disconnection. Like I was just like going through the motions. I felt like a robotic almost. And so like I struggled with that mightily through junior year. And I ended up doing, so then Ashton hits me up again in the summer. It's like, hey, I got somewhere else. Do you want to do some? I was like, sure. And again, I was using it to more like for fun at this point, right? And so we had this, another crazy time again. That was like the most visually intense thing I remember going through. There was one significant part, which I don't think I've ever even talked about on mic, not even on the bridge. So like it's exclusive here.
Let's go.
But I remember like everybody else had passed out, and it was just me up and awake. I also, side note, like at that point from like 8th grade to like all the way to like I was 22, I had really, really bad insomnia. So I'm talking like 3 hours of sleep a night. And so like those architecture days, I was still getting 3 to 4 hours of sleep. And I would occasionally like binge nap when I was just like completely exhausted, but that was consistent through most of high school and college. Not good for you.
Not the best thing.
No. And I didn't, and again, like I had no perspective on that, because that's just what that was like my normal. My normal was that, so like I had no idea how awful that was and how like better I could feel. But I couldn't sleep. So I was up, and I remember when my mind started to go into like down that squirrely rabbit hole again. And I remember actively suppressing that pull toward that. And I ended up in that moment, like getting like a little bit of like a tremor into my wrist. So like what had ended up happening was, in retrospect now, at the moment I didn't know what was going on, but I couldn't stop shaking my hand, and it was freaking me out. And it's a very nerve-wracking thing. Like I just did this LSD the second time, and now this is happening. Like I would do this like constantly. Like I couldn't stop it. Like I'd hold my hand and it wouldn't stop. What ended up happening was like I suppressed that going deep. Like the medicine was trying to take me in to do some healing. And I said no. And so it ended up, so that negative energy just like ended up like manifesting physically. And so like anytime like I would have like a triggering thought that would trigger, you know, like depression or anxiety, like I would feel like we would start to do that. And I'd have to like hold something, like I have to grip something really tight, like a stress ball, or like grip a table sometimes, like, or like hold my like leg if I was like giving a presentation in class or something like that. And it would just start to like go again. So that was like a really squirrely thing for me at that point. It's not there anymore, but like if I do have a triggering thought like that, even now, like it will start to do that. Like I'll notice it triggers that, but I'm aware of it now, so I can kind of stop it. But again, this was all unconscious, John. Like this was like, again, you don't really know how dark you're in a spot you're in until you're into the deep parts of it. And so, you know, senior year is when, you know, I really got more like self-abusive, I guess, you know, and was again, very, very, very dark spot. Like there was probably not, like there was a stretch of time where I remember not being able, there's a stretch of time where I don't remember not thinking about like having suicidal thoughts like every single day. Like I remember looking back, like I don't remember the last time I didn't have that every single day. And like it got to that point, like, again, it becomes your new normal, you know? So like you become numb to it. And so like, long story short, like I survived like, you know, senior year. I barely graduated. Like literally just skidded by like getting into graduation that year. And like at the end of senior year, like I just wanted to like a fresh start. It's like I'm finally done. Maybe this is my time. Like I'm going to go full time and pursue fighting. You know, give this thing like I want a final shot. And so it's like I want to get as far away from here as possible. Like and I was pretty good at. I was very good also, which is a bad thing, but a good thing at like keeping a good face on. So like not very many people knew that was going on. Maybe one or two of my friends could get a feeling, but none of them ever knew like how bad it ever was at that time. And so I was looking at places literally across the country, like Florida, Colorado, Seattle, California, Nevada. Like I'm moving to the furthest place away I can get, you know, because like I need space from this negativity. And I was looking at places that had really, really top level MMA gyms, like the ones with the pros are training at. I was like, I'm just gonna go find one of the gyms and then do it how they do, you know, like start as an amateur or start as like someone training, become an amateur, become a pro. That's how it happens. And like out of nowhere, I'm like we're at my senior year house. I'm outside looking up apartments, and my one friend, who I'd been friends with since freshman year, who was in my fraternity too as well. But like we would rarely ever see each other because he always lived like off campus. And I would only ever see him every now and then. And we were close. We pledged together, but we again, like we never saw each other. Like happens to come over. And we just started talking. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to move to California. It's like, I'm planning to move to California too. And I was like, huh, interesting. Like, where are you looking? Because I had not picked out a concrete spot, but he wanted to go, because he was more into tech stuff. Like he wanted to go to Silicon Valley, like San Francisco area. I was like, what's around there? Like MMA gyms, AKA, Daniel Cormier, Cain Velasquez, Luke Rockhold.
Oh, okay.
So some big Khabib. Yeah,
right.
those are some. They're okay. That's in San Jose. So I was like, Jesus. I didn't think about AKA, but shit, why not? And so we ended up moving out to California together as roommates. Like a couple of weeks before I'm set to leave. Like I'm just gonna go live out there by myself and just figure shit out. And then we ended up moving out together. And he's now probably my closest friend besides Sean. And we'd been through a lot together, you know, on that whole trip. But before I left, coming back full circle here again, a lot of circles. It's like the fucking Olympics. Before I left, I got this like intuitive urge to, because again, being where I was, you know, just suicidal and depressed and not knowing what I want to do and feeling like a failure because I barely graduated and feeling like a fraud and feeling guilty for like having not done better in college. And then like, you know, just my mind would always kind of go back to the only positive thing that it got me through was like every night I remember I would just like pray again, like even through all of that, like I managed to find the ability to pray to God for my my mom, my sister, and my grandma at home. Like just make sure they're safe. I protect them. Make sure they're okay. Like fuck whatever happens to me, but like just make sure they're okay. So I even through like again, so that's one thing I didn't even unconsciously know that that my mom was able to give to me. And I didn't even realize at the time was having that personal connection, just being able to speak to it. Sometimes I would talk to my dad, just like if you're hearing this, whatever, if you're around, Um, so also like maybe in that summer, one of my really good friends, her younger brother ended up committing suicide and like actually killing himself. So that was like a really big, like another eye opener for me because like I was like just about to do that. I survived, and he did it, and I just saw how much damage it did to my friend and their family. And he was 14, and that was rough. And I remember, so I'm bouncing around a lot, so you're gonna have to forgive me. But so my mom again had gone to, good. My mom had gone to, I guess, like I said, a couple of different mediums when my dad passed away, and over the years, there was this one in particular. Her name is Michelle, who was, gave her like some pretty accurate stuff. And one of the main things was that when she was able to connect with my dad, was that he will come like to look out for like cardinals, the bird. Like that's when you'll know he's around. So, so if you go to my house, there's like a lot of cardinals all over the place. And so that's like a very significant symbology for my family, and my mom very much so. And there was even times like I remember on my mom's one birthday, like after she had gotten that reading, that like we were in like not even at home, we were in New York, and like a cardinal like flew right up into the window, like right in front of her on her birthday, and that was like special. And so like I'd always had him in my head as that.
Hold on. I've only and like so I think I've only told maybe one or two other people this, but like me and my obsession with like the color red, and it started with like the New Jersey Devils and all this and all that stuff, but like I always associated seeing a cardinal with my relatives that had passed on, and like no one ever told me to do that. Like,
interesting.
That was just something that I
intuitively, yeah.
Like I'm like, because it's so different than all the like brown birds that you see all the fucking time. You know what I mean? And Blue Jays, also I had a connection, but it was more of like, whoa, Blue Jays are blue and gray and white and they're beautiful. But with Cardinals, it was like, because so like I said, like I my father did not pass away, but my grandfather died when I was a month old. And my other grandfather lived in Puerto Rico, and if you don't accept Christ as your Lord and Savior and you do this, you're not.
Yeah.
We won't talk to you. So, so it was like the cardinal, and then my mom also had my first would have been half sister. She passed away at 2.5. So I've always had like, my brother would talk about his guardian angel is our sister that passed because he was 2 years
older.
He was probably four years old when she passed away. And then my mom and my brother went and found, my dad and then had my sister and me. So it was like the cardinal was his guardian angel was Bambi was with the nickname she got, my sister that passed away. And then my grandfather was like coming to me as like the cardinal, and like I even wrote in was it the 1-year-old card? I saw a card for my I think it was 1 year old for my two nephews, Axel and Blaze. They it had a cardinal on the front, and like it was just a blank card.
Yeah.
I was so drawn to it, and like they can't read, right? But I wrote this like whole thing of what like I hope every time you see a cardinal, you think of like me and our family and our past family members. Like know that you're always safe when you see. And I wrote this whole thing. I'm like crying as I'm writing this thing.
Oh,
that I don't know if they're ever even going to be able to. I don't know if they're ever going to read because I don't know if it's going to last. But like, hopefully, my sister awesome. and my brother-in-law would see. So that's
yeah.
that's really deep because like I don't know if I've ever even told anity.
Yeah, I don't tell people very much because again, it's also you know, not everybody's again like open to that kind of idea of stuff. But I remember I'd come back from the funeral of my friend's younger brother, and I was sitting in the car, and I was feeling a lot of things because it was like I could just the grief and seeing how, you know, wrecked my friend was by it, because it was a shock. It wasn't like one of those things where like you're expecting it. And I guess just said like a little prayer, like, you know, like, God, I mean, my grandma passed away that year too, my senior year too, which is rough for me because I was close with my grandma. So I was, and again, it wasn't never like, Jesus Christ, my Lord. It was more like, God, Mom, Dad, whoever's like, listen up there. I was like, it's like, make sure he's okay. And then you can just like, make sure Helen's okay. And everybody's doing okay. And like at that exact moment I said that, like a cardinal flew up onto like the front of my car, like right in front of me. It was like looking at me, like, and I was just like, I was taken aback because it was like on command. It was like in response, like a direct response. Mm-hmm. I was like, whoa. And so like that stuck with me. But even at that time, like it wasn't, I had not really even gone down the spiritual path. It wasn't until I was about to leave for California and got the intuitive message to ask my mom for the number of that lady that she used to talk to my dad, because I wanted to see if I could talk to him before I go. I'm like, I'm about to do something. I'm about to do a fucking big leap of faith here, like gigantic. I'm about to drive across the country to pursue a career that most people would call a pipe dream, you know. And so I ended up talking to this lady, which was my first time ever doing that, and I had no idea what to expect. And that was the start really of like me down this spiritual path.